Humanity had been in the galactic concord for less than a few cycles, and already the cracks in its so-called unity were glaringly obvious. The concord was not an alliance of equals. It was an empire masquerading as a council. The Drovak, colossal, naturally armoured warriors, held dominion through thinly veiled threats, their will shaping galactic law. The other species, whether out of fear or pragmatism, fell in line. At first, humans observed in silence. They had not come to start trouble, merely to integrate, to find their place in galactic society. They kept to themselves, learning the unspoken rules that governed this assembly. But as they attended council meetings, they noticed a pattern. Every decision favoured the Drovak. Every disagreement ended in veiled threats. And whenever a weaker species protested, they were silenced, through ridicule, through coercion, through fear. Humanity did not speak, yet, but they knew. Sooner or later, this fragile act would shatter. The Drovak had grown used to obedience, to fear-drenched silence, but if they ever tried to treat humanity the same way they treated the others, there would be a response, and it would not be silence. But the final straw came sooner, when an alien emperor, small, feathered, yet regal, stood before the council and dared to speak against the Drovak. His species, the Kellerin, were not warriors. Their voices, usually soft and melodic, they lacked the towering frames and armoured hides of the Drovak, but they had something rare in the Concord, the courage to protest. The Treaty of Zelvara was signed in good faith, the Kellorin Emperor declared, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. Your forces were bound to respect our borders, and yet you violated them. Your ships have been mining within our sovereign space, stealing our resources, and when our miners, our people tried to resist, your soldiers slaughtered them. The chamber was silent. Then a slow, amused chuckle echoed across the chamber. The Drovak ambassador leaned back, his mandibles clicking in amusement. His voice dripped with sarcasm as he waved a clawed hand dismissively. You worry too much, Your Highness. All this fuss over a few dead miners? Really? He let out a low chuckle, his crimson eyes gleaming with cruel satisfaction. Be reasonable. Just move on and find some new rock to dig through. For a moment the Emperor simply stared, his beak slightly parted as if he had misheard. A deep chill ran through him, mixed with fear and disbelief. Lives meant nothing to them. The treaty meant nothing. With visible effort he forced his feathers to settle, his grip on the podium tightening to still the slight tremor in his hands. His voice, when it came, was firm. Not loud, not shaken, but resolute. We demand justice, the Emperor said, each word deliberate. The officers responsible for these murders must be surrendered to us. Your forces must withdraw from our colonies, as the treaty states, and any resource mine should be returned to us. Demand? The Drovak repeated, drawing out the word as if it was some ridiculous joke. You are in no position to demand anything, Kellerin. The Emperor did not back down. He would not. The treaty was clear, he said, his voice firm. Or does the word of the Drovak mean nothing? A sharp silence filled the chamber. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others stared straight ahead, unwilling to be caught watching. The amusement in the Drovak's eyes faded slightly, replaced by something colder. Annoyance. For a moment he simply stared at the Kellorin Emperor, his claws tightening against the table. Then slowly, deliberately, he stood, towering. The Drovak loomed over the Kellorin Emperor, his armoured frame casting a shadow that swallowed the smaller ruler whole. A cruel smirk tugged at his mandibles. He tilted his head, voice thick with mockery. You still don't understand your position, do you? His voice was slow, deliberate, a predator toying with prey. I could slap you across the face right now, and you wouldn't do a damn thing about it. No one would. He leaned in ever so slightly, mandibles clicking with amusement. Do you want me to do that? For a moment, the Emperor forgot to breathe. He had expected threats. He had expected dismissal. But this open public humiliation? The Drovak's words rang in his ears, each syllable dripping with mockery, power, and absolute certainty that nothing would happen. And the worst part, he was right. Still, he was a ruler, a king. He would not show weakness. Not in front of his officers, his people. He exhaled sharply as he looked toward them. Tears. They stood at attention, their uniforms crisp, their posture rigid, but their eyes glistened. Silent, helpless grief. They had lost kin. And now here, before the entire council, their king was being humiliated. The Emperor's hands clenched into fists. He would not stand here, silent, a powerless witness to his own humiliation. He would speak, damn the consequences. Even if the Drovak struck him down, he would not cower. But before a single word could leave his lips, "Try it!" The words fell like a hammer, and it did not belong to him. The Emperor turned, as did everyone else. Seated beside him, a human diplomat. The man had been quiet throughout the proceedings, observing in silence as if waiting for something. Now he moved. He rose from his seat, stepping forward, positioning himself directly between the Emperor and the Drovak. And when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty, unyielding. "Try it," he repeated, meeting the Drovak's gaze without flinching. "And I will break your arm before it even hits anything." His posture did not shift. There was no bluff. The Drovak ambassador's smug expression faltered. The words weren't shouted. They weren't laced with threats. They were simply stated. A fact. The sheer confidence in his tone, the absolute, unwavering conviction, sent a ripple through the chamber. The other diplomats watched in stunned disbelief, some with mouths slightly open, as if they couldn't quite believe what they had just witnessed. Because for the first time in the history of the Council, someone had told the Drovak no, and meant it. For a moment, the chamber remained frozen. Then, the Drovak took a slow step back. His heavy, armoured frame shifted, his mandibles clicking in barely restrained fury. He had been challenged, defied. In front of the entire Council, a deep guttural growl rumbled from his chest, and his next words dripped with pure, seething malice. "You have made the worst mistake of your existence." His glare swept from the human to the Keloran Emperor, his massive form towering over them both. "I will raise your world to cinders." He snarled at the human. "And when I am done, your species will be nothing but whispers of a foolish race that thought itself brave." Then his gaze snapped to the Keloran Emperor, who stiffened but did not look away. "As for you," the Drovak's mandibles curled in something grotesquely close to a grin, "your kind will beg for mercy before the end, but I will grant you none. You will live." His voice turned almost mocking. "As slaves, your children, your elders, all of you. That is the fate you have sealed today." No one spoke. No one dared. Because in that moment, the Drovak were no longer making threats. They were making a promise. The silence stretched, thick with the weight of the threat hanging in the air. Then the human took a single step forward, unflinching, unmoved. His gaze never wavered from the Drovak as he spoke, his voice calm, steady, deadly certain. "Long ago," the human said, "bullies came to Earth too. They brought chains, fire, and promises of domination." He leaned in, voice like a vow. "None of them are left." A pause. "Come and find out why." The human's words were not loud, yet they carried like a war drum, a statement, a warning, a line drawn in stone. The Drovak's mandibles twitched, his armoured shoulders rising as he let out a low guttural growl. Mocking, dismissive. "Then prepare yourselves," he rumbled, voice thick with cruel certainty. "Prepare as much as you can." His eyes glinted with grim satisfaction. "For this is the last time you walk as free men." A shiver ran through the assembled diplomats, their faces pale, their eyes darting toward the humans as if expecting them to falter. But they did not. The human stood unmoved, unbowed. The Drovak turned, his heavy footfalls echoing like the tolling of war drums. This was no longer politics. This was no longer diplomacy. This was the beginning of a war. As the council adjourned, species hurried away in stunned silence, avoiding the human's gaze, as if fearing that even acknowledging them would make them targets of the Drovak's wrath. But before the Keloran Emperor could leave, a hand rested on his shoulder. He turned, feathers trembling, to see the human diplomat looking at him, not with pity but with unwavering certainty. "We won't let anything happen to your world," the human said. The Emperor exhaled shakily. His voice was quiet, heavy with both gratitude and guilt. I never meant to drag you into this." The human gave a small, grim smile. "You didn't." He glanced toward the chamber doors where the Drovak had disappeared. "This was always going to happen. You just gave them an excuse." The Emperor had known in that moment that the humans would stand by him. He gave a solemn nod. He did not thank the human. Some debts could never be repaid in words. Within a week, the Drovak made good on their promise. Their armadas descended like storm, vast and unrelenting. Hundreds of warships bristling with weapons advanced with ruthless power, blotting out the stars. Swarms of fighter craft moved in disciplined waves, a tidal force of destruction. This was not an invasion, it was an execution. But the humans had always known this day would come. They had prepared. Every war game, every defense protocol, every technological advancement had been driven by the simple, unwavering belief that one day someone would try to take their world from them. Earth was no stranger to war, and history had proven time and again that humanity fought best with its back against the wall. Yet, there was one problem. Their strategy had never accounted for splitting their forces. Half of Earth's fleet now raced to defend Kelorin, leaving humanity's homeworld dangerously under strength against an enemy that already outnumbered them. The plan had to change. Improvisation would decide survival. And humans? They were very, very good at improvising. Fleet Admiral Steel stood on the command deck of the HSF Aegis, hands clasped behind his back as he gazed at the holographic display before him. The enemy fleet loomed like a monstrous storm, its vastness a testament to the Drovak's belief in brute force. He tilted his head slightly, his voice calm, almost casual. "Enemy numbers?" A crisp voice responded. "Sensors confirm 80 to 100 capital-class warships, dreadnoughts and battleships, sir. 800 to 1,100 warships in total. Fighter craft estimates as per the intel are fluctuating, but we're looking at 25 to 28,000. There was a pause. Then Commander Park spoke, his voice tight. "About 4 times our strength." Silence stretched for a moment. No one in the room needed to be reminded why. Humanity had sent half of its forces to the Kelorin homeworld, leaving Earth's defenses at critical disadvantage. Steel turned to Park, his expression unreadable. "Does that concern you, Commander?" Park hesitated. He was a seasoned officer, not one to spook easily, but the sheer numbers... "I won't lie, sir. It's not ideal." A small smirk tugged at the corner of Steele's mouth. He turned back to the holographic projection, eyeing the massive Drovak fleet bearing down on them. "No, it's not," he agreed. "But war never is." He took a step forward, placing his hands on the console, his voice carrying the weight of every soldier who had ever fought for their home. "Let me make one thing clear," he said, his voice steady, confident. "This is not going to be a walk in the park. We are outnumbered, outgunned, and they expect us to break." His eyes scanned the room, meeting the gazes of his officers, his crew. "But this is who we are. We are forged in fire, shaped by struggle. Standing against the impossible isn't new to us. It's in our blood. And we are about to teach the galaxy why no one in their right mind should pick a fight with humanity." His voice grew sharper, cutting through the tension like a blade. "They think war is about brute strength, about firepower, about numbers. But war isn't just about who has the biggest fleet. War is about strategy. It's about patience. It's about knowing your enemy and making them bleed before they even reach the battlefield." His voice hardened. "The Drovak are bullies. They've spent their lives crushing anyone who dared to defy them. But today, we remind them of something they've clearly forgotten." He took a step forward, his expression turning into a razor-sharp grin. "Humanity doesn't tolerate bullies." A ripple of quiet determination spread through the bridge, shoulders squared, spines straightened. Every officer stood a little taller. Steel exhaled, slow and measured, then turned back to the massive fleet looming ahead. His voice dropped to a cold, commanding tone. "Begin Operation Stormbreaker." The Drovak Armada loomed at the edge of the solar system, a massive wall of warships poised for annihilation. From the bridge of the Wrath of Dominion, Supreme Warlord Vakareth stared at the screen, his crimson eyes locked onto the image of a human. "Fleet Admiral Steel," Vakareth began, his voice a deep, rumbling growl. "You stand at the precipice of extinction. My armada is here as promised. I will give you one opportunity, one chance to surrender. Surrender now, and I may allow a few of you to live, as slaves if nothing else." Steel met his gaze, unyielding. A smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You are welcome to try." Then Vakareth bared his fangs. "So be it. Die screaming." He turned to his officers. "Advance the fleet. Kill them all." The Drovak fleet surged forward, a merciless wall of warships blotting out the stars as they crossed into the Sol system. Thousands of ships moved in cold, disciplined formation, their weapons primed, their intent clear. This was not an invasion, it was an execution. Supreme Warlord Vakareth stood at the bridge of the Wrath of Dominion, his mandibles twitching in anticipation. Before him, holographic displays projected the real-time positions of his armada and the distant human fleet. The humans were waiting, not at Earth, but near Jupiter. Vakareth's crimson eyes narrowed as he studied the human formation. A paltry 20 warships and 200 fighter craft hovered within the planet's orbit, seemingly exposed, their formation tight and defensive. A growl rumbled deep in his chest. They take us for fools. Jupiter loomed in the distance, a swirling colossus of storms and fury, its gravitational pull strong enough to bend light itself. No sane commander would fight so close to it unless they were desperate or foolish. This is an obvious trap. His claws tightened against the steel railing. They want us to chase them. They think they can use that giant planet they call Jupiter, its gravity to their advantage. Zalvek, his second-in-command, scoffed. Then we do not chase, we burn them from a distance. Vakareth gave a slow nod. Indeed. He turned to his weapons officer. Target the human ships, fire at will. Let them realize their mistake. Across the vast emptiness of space, Drovak warships shifted into bombardment formations. The order rippled through the fleet, and within moments, the black void was filled with lances of energy. Titanic plasma bolts hurtled toward the human ships, and then curved away. Vakareth's eyes widened as the shots bent wildly off course, their trajectories warping as they were pulled off target by the immense gravity of Jupiter. Some bolts arced back toward empty space. Others spiraled toward the gas giant's crushing atmosphere, vanishing into its swirling depths. Zalvek's mandibles clicked in frustration. Impossible! Vakareth snarled, eyes flashing with fury. It is not impossible. It is physics. The humans position themselves perfectly. Our long-range bombardment is useless at this range. Zalvek hesitated. Then what are your orders, Supreme Warlord? Vakareth exhaled slowly. His mind worked swiftly, adjusting tactics. If their weapons were ineffective at long range, they would have to engage more closely, but carefully. He turned to his officers. They think they can ambush us, show them why we rule the galaxy, deploy a detachment, 100 warships, 1,000 fighters, crush them like ants, send them in an arc formation, approach cautiously and take them down at mid-range. But warn them, Jupiter's gravity is no ally. If they miscalculate even once, it will drag them to their doom. Zalvek grinned. As you command, Supreme Warlord. The order was relayed. Within moments, a detachment broke off from the main armada, moving toward Jupiter in disciplined formation. Warships prowled forward, their dark hulls reflecting the pale glow of the distant sun, while waves of fighter craft surged ahead like a living storm. Supreme Warlord Vakareth watched the detachment advance with a predatory gleam in his crimson eyes. His forces had superior numbers, superior firepower. The humans had nothing but their stubborn defiance and a planet-sized gravity well at their backs. He would make them regret their arrogance. The human ships remained in formation, silent, motionless, waiting. The moment the Drovak detachment crossed an invisible threshold in space, the human warships suddenly broke formation. The ships scattered in different directions, their drives igniting in a synchronized burst of acceleration. The fighter squadrons followed suit, not engaging directly, but darting around the approaching Drovak fleet like a swarm of wasps. Vakareth's mandibles clicked in annoyance. They scatter like prey before the slaughter. His second-in-command, Zalvek, let out a short laugh. Their numbers are too few. They cannot possibly hope to win a dogfight. This is nothing more than a delaying tactic. But then, the human ships didn't flee away from Jupiter. They dove toward it. Vakareth's eyes narrowed. His claws tightened against the railing. The Drovak warships followed as ordered, cautiously adjusting for Jupiter's immense gravity, their commanders mindful of the Supreme Warlord's warning. Their sensors locked onto the human ships, weapons primed. The enemy was within range, and yet the humans did not fire a single shot. Instead, the first human battleship twisted its trajectory sharply, using Jupiter's gravity to slingshot itself at an impossible angle. A second human warship did the same, then a third, then a fourth. One by one, the human vessels used the planet's immense pull to whip themselves around at unnatural speeds, rocketing into new attack vectors with surgical precision. The Drovak ships, heavier and less maneuverable, struggled to adjust. Their tracking systems flickered erratically, struggling to compensate for the gravitational distortions. Several of the Drovak fighter squadrons, flying too close to the planet, found themselves dragged downward, their engines screaming against the pull of Jupiter's atmosphere. Many didn't escape. Vakareth watched as a few dozen Drovak fighters were swallowed whole by the gas giant, their forms vanishing into the thick, crushing clouds below. Zalvek hissed in disbelief. They're using the planet's gravity as a slingshot. Before he could finish, a shot struck. The first shot came not from the ships, but from Jupiter's moons. A blinding lance of energy erupted from Io, cutting across the battlefield with terrifying precision. One of the lead Drovak warships, a destroyer, took the full brunt of the blast. Its shields flared, shattered, then the ship itself split apart, torn in half by the sheer force of the impact. Vakareth's eyes widened. "Hidden weapons," Zalvek bellowed. "The humans have installed weapon platforms on the moons." The revelation sent a ripple of alarm through the Drovak ranks, but there was no time to react. A second shot came, this time from Ganymede. A railgun, its barrel embedded deep within the moon's surface, discharged a projectile moving at an unthinkable velocity. It tore through space like a spear hurled by a vengeful god. The target, an advancing Drovak cruiser, tried to evade, but it was too slow. The hypervelocity round smashed through its hull, punching clean through the bridge before detonating deep within its core. The warship exploded in a violent cascade of fire and debris. Panic gripped the Drovak detachment. "Defensive formation," one of the Drovak captains barked over the comms. "Watch your positioning. The moons are armed. They led us right into a crossfire." Vakareth bared his fangs in a mixture of rage and reluctant admiration. Clever bastards. The humans hadn't just lured them in, they had carefully chosen their battlefield. Jupiter's gravity prevented long-range bombardment, and the moons were secretly armed with heavy weaponry. And now, the Drovak fleet was caught in a deadly gauntlet. More railgun slugs and plasma lances erupted from the moons. The human warships continued their deadly dance, using Jupiter's gravity to pull off impossible maneuvers while striking with ruthless precision. Drovak ships burned one after another. A battlecruiser lost control, its trajectory thrown off by the gravitational distortions. It spiraled helplessly toward Jupiter, its hull groaning as it was pulled down into the gas giant's crushing depths. Another Drovak destroyer was ripped apart by missile fire from a human ship that had seemingly appeared out of nowhere, using the gravity well to fling itself into a perfect ambush position. More Drovak fighters, disoriented by the gravitational shifts, collided with each other, their pilots overwhelmed by the chaos of the battlefield. Vakareth's mandibles clenched so tightly they almost cracked. His detachment was being annihilated. During the chaos of the battle, amid the blinding flashes of plasma fire and the disintegrating hulls of Drovak vessels, one human warship took a direct hit. The bolt of searing energy slammed into its starboard side, breaching multiple decks and sending debris spiraling into the void. The ship shuddered, its engines flaring erratically as emergency bulkheads slammed shut across its exposed sections. It was wounded, clearly and visibly, but not destroyed. By this point, the Drovak warships were reduced to smouldering wreckage. The human vessels began to pull away. Engines flared as they moved in formation, escorting their heavily damaged companion through the debris field. Plasma scars marred the ship's hull, one engine sputtering as it struggled to keep up. Vakareth leaned forward, his crimson eyes narrowing. "They're retreating," growled one of his tacticians. "They've depleted their munitions," Vakareth muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "And they're dragging a crippled ship with them." The humiliation of defeat, fresh and bitter in his mouth, he barked, "Follow them," he ordered, voice trembling with fury. "Hunt them down. I want them all destroyed." The Drovak force surged forward, chasing the human vessels across the void. The trail led them toward a dense asteroid field, a chaotic cloud of tumbling rock and drifting shadows. And then, nothing. The human ships vanished. Sensors picked up only one contact, the damaged ship slowly spinning caught between the massive, drifting stones. Systems flickered faintly. No escort, no movement. Zalvek stepped forward, eyeing the readings with disdain. "They used the asteroid belt to flee," he sneered. "And it looks like they abandoned their own," he scoffed. "Such cowards abandoning their own." The Drovak fleet moved cautiously through the asteroid field, their hulls creaking as proximity alarms echoed through the corridors. Jagged rocks floated past their viewports, some no larger than a fighter, others the size of small cities. The damaged human ship drifted ahead, motionless, its lights flickering dimly like a dying ember. Officer Zalvek studied the sensor data with narrowed eyes. "No sign of life on that ship, sir," he reported. "Looks like they abandoned it." Vakarith didn't respond immediately. His mandibles clicked once, no sign of life, then stopped as a chill of unease crawled up his spine. His crimson eyes widened as realization struck. "It's another." Before he could say anything further, the alarms aboard his flagship blared to life, a shrieking chorus of warnings lighting up the control deck. "Incoming projectiles," another officer shouted. "They're coming from all directions." The crew scrambled to respond. On the screens, dozens, no, hundreds of asteroids had begun to shift unnaturally. They weren't drifting, they were accelerating, moving with purpose. Controlled. Vakarith's gaze hardened. They've weaponized the asteroids. Hidden thrusters embedded into the rock faces ignited, sending massive chunks of debris hurtling toward the fleet. As they closed in, some asteroids began to shudder, then erupted in sprays of deadly shrapnel, revealing mines buried within their cores. Others launched volleys of rockets, primitive in construction but terrifyingly effective at close range. The Drovak ships tried to scatter, maneuvering through the chaos, but the tight confines of the asteroid field left little room to evade. One warship took a direct hit from a fast-approaching asteroid and exploded in a blinding fireball, sending chunks of molten hull into the void. "Get us out of here!" Vakareth bellowed, gripping the railing so hard it groaned under his claws. Capital ships attempted to retreat, engines flaring bright as they pushed to escape the encroaching trap. But it was too late for many. Explosions rippled through the fleet as more asteroids struck. Many of his capital ships were caught by behemoth rocks, each the size of a city, crushing them like insects beneath a boot. Fire and twisted metal spiraled out into the blackness. Vakareth's own vessel shuddered under the impact of a nearby blast, hull plates buckling, but the damage was minor, enough to shake the crew, not destroy them. As the remaining Drovak warships finally breached the edge of the asteroid field, battered and broken, silence fell on the bridge. What had begun as a pursuit for glory had become a desperate escape from a brilliantly laid trap, and the humans were nowhere to be seen. The wreckage of their capital ships still smouldered among the asteroids. Fires flickered from ruptured hulls, casting ghostly glows across drifting metal. The silence of space was broken only by the buzz of damaged comm relays and the hum of engines attempting to restabilize the remnants of the once mighty forward Drovak formation. Inside the command bridge of the Wrath of Dominion, Supreme Warlord Vakarith's rage boiled beneath the surface of his armored skin. His claws dug furrows into the steel railing. His pride was bleeding. The bridge was silent. No officer dared speak, until Supreme Commander Vakarith ordered the comms officer to hail the human admiral once again. The comms officer patched it through. A moment later, the face of Fleet Admiral Steel flickered into view on the main view screen. Calm, composed. The human commander stood with arms folded, the faint silhouette of his bridge glowing behind him in Earth-standard lighting. Vakarith's voice thundered out across the void. "Human," he growled. "Stop hiding behind rocks and tricks. Enough with your cowards' games. Face us like warriors. Fight like warriors." The transmission crackled, but Steele's expression didn't change. For a beat, silence. Then he spoke, voice even, with the faintest trace of a grin. "We were just leveling the playing field, that's all." He leaned forward slightly, tone sharpening. "You brought a fleet 4 times our size. You call us cowards, but if it's bravery you wanted, perhaps you should have brought equal numbers." He turned, pacing slightly, hands behind his back. "Then again," Steele said, his voice laced with pointed calm, "there's an old saying on Earth." He stopped and stared directly into the screen. "Only dogs hunt in packs. A tiger hunts alone." Then he ended the transmission. The screen went black. For a long moment, no one on the Wrath of Dominion dared speak. Vakarith's fury crackled in the silence like a storm building behind his eyes. "All ships," he finally commanded, voice like broken stone, "advance. No more games." His glare burned through the stars. I will break this creature's jaws with my own hands. The stars around Sol shimmered with ancient apathy, unaware, or perhaps uncaring, of the violence gathering near the third planet from its heart. Supreme Commander Vakareth stood before the observation wall of his capital ship and watched the pale blue sphere grow larger by the minute. Earth, the planet that dared challenge Drovak might. Behind him, the vast Drovak fleet waited, engines thrumming in silence. Their number still marginally higher than Earth's forces. Heavy war barges bristled with plasma batteries. Interdiction platforms floated alongside cruisers that could crush moons. Vakareth's chitinous face curled into a sneer. "How quaint," he muttered. "They think they can take us head-on." His adjutant, a pale-skinned Drovak with neatly coiled tendrils, stepped forward with measured precision. "Supreme Commander, the Terran defense grid is active. Their fleet matches our earlier projections, a pitifully small fleet, barely a fraction of our own." Vakareth let out a low, rumbling growl of satisfaction. "Then this will be over by dawn." Beneath the scarred rock of Earth's moon, Fleet Admiral Admiral Steel stood within the command sphere of HSF. Aegis, humanity's flagship. He was tall, lean from age and worry. His uniform was threadbare at the collar, the lines on his face carved by too many battles, too many funerals. Earth hung behind the reinforced glass viewport like a fragile marble. He stared at it in silence. "Drovak fleet just past Mars, sir," said Officer Park. "Estimated arrival in orbit, 4 hours." Steele folded his arms. He turned toward the tactical map. The Drovak would expect a desperate, static defense, Earth clinging to its guns, trying to hold the line. But Steele had never believed in walls. He believed in movement, precision, ambiguity. "Order all strike groups to scatter formation. Begin drift veil protocol." Park blinked. "You want to give them Earth's orbit?" "Not give," Steele said. "Bait." Vakareth's fleet moved forward like a hammer crashing into a glass pond. The void around Earth shimmered bright lights as hundreds of jagged ships neared it. Sensors screamed across Earth's defenses. On the Aegis, alarms echoed, but Steele stood unmoved. Vakareth's eyes glimmered with pride. "Launch all wings. Crush their orbital grid, leave no debris field capable of shielding them." Drovak fighters, bulky shield-heavy assault craft, poured from their carriers. Gunships followed. Plasma fire began to arc toward orbital stations. One Terran station burst apart as a plasma beam sliced through its core, its fragments scattering into orbit. A communications satellite was vaporized instantly, but there was no reply. Drovak gunships strafed the upper atmosphere, their heavy cannons raking across the outer layer of Earth's shield network, briefly exposing vulnerable corridors. Still, no fighter swarms, no counteroffensive. Vakareth leaned forward. "What are they doing? Why aren't they engaging?" And then they did. From behind Luna, from inside asteroid shadows, and under false energy signatures, the Terran fighter wings emerged, not to charge, but to dance. Human starfighters, lighter than anything the Drovak had ever seen, burst through the void in tightly coordinated formations. They spun on 6-axis vectors, jinking past torpedoes and plasma blasts like phantoms. Vakareth's ships tried to lock targets. Failed. They tried to predict trajectories. Failed. Every time a Drovak cruiser began tracking, the humans disappeared behind a gravity sink or planetary mass shadow. They struck at weak points, engine vents, sensor clusters, bridge domes, and retreated before retaliation. "Where are their capital ships?" Vakareth barked. "Unknown," his adjutant hissed. "We cannot get clean readings. They are jamming us with electronic noise. And decoys." He pointed to a formation of what appeared to be 10 Terran cruisers. Vakareth fired. The plasma lances passed through holographic fields. The cruisers flickered, vanished. They had wasted a third of their opening barrage on nothing. On board the Aegis, Steel paced. "They'll come in heavier now," he muttered. "They think we're stalling." From Earth's orbit, 4 orbital defense platforms powered up. Hidden for decades beneath solar panels and derelict station husks, these kinetic rail launchers, nicknamed Thor's Eyes, were designed for one job only: anti-capital strikes. "Targets locked," came the call. Steel raised his hand. "Fire." Across the sky, tungsten rods accelerated to near-relativistic speed. Within seconds, 3 Drovak cruisers burst into fireballs. One battleship fractured down the center as if split by a divine blade. Vakareth's bridge shook from the shockwave. "What was that?" "Kinetic slugs." "Sir, that didn't come from a ship. Those were orbital platforms." Vakareth's claws tightened. They're using the planet's gravity as a trap. They've prepared every inch of this system like a minefield. He growled. Fine, pull back, regroup. We'll hit them from Lagrange too, from above. Steel smiled as the Drovak pulled back. He whispered, just where I want you. Sir? They're going to L2. Run the net. Commander Park blinked. That's a bluff protocol. It hasn't been tested since. Now, as Vakareth's forces repositioned to the shadowed edge of Earth's gravity field, dozens of small cylindrical objects began to drift their way, barely larger than escape pods. Debris? A Drovak officer muttered, until one of them exploded with an EMP burst. The rest activated, releasing nanite clouds that scrambled targeting, corrupted visual feeds, and flooded enemy comms with human music. An old Earth song. Sinatra, fly me to the moon, Vakareth screamed. Destroy them, all of them. But his targeting was blind, his commands jammed, his ships fired into the darkness, into illusions. Still they managed to hit a few pods, exploding in a bright flash of fire. The pods kept them busy just long enough. And then from below came Steel's fleet, capital ships rising from Earth's atmosphere like ghosts from hell. UNN Bastion, Hammerfall, Galileo, Iron Resolve, every gun armed, all ships, advance, light them up. The Terran counteroffensive was surgical. The human cruisers started targeting enemy propulsion. The Drovak tried to rotate, tried to answer, but Steel had done something no commander had dared before. He split his fleet mid-combat, letting each unit act semi-autonomously under AI-assisted command relays. Alongside the ships, the human fighter wings were already carving their legend into the void. Outnumbered 3-1, the Terran starfighters dove into the fray with impossible speed. Sleek, needle-shaped interceptors, painted in the dull greys and blacks of void operations, moved in packs, weaving between enemy formations with such precision that even the Drovak targeting system struggled to keep up. Vakareth's officers watched in disbelief as their own interceptors were outflown. Their ships were tougher, heavier, armed to the teeth, but they may as well have been flying bricks. They're too fast, one of his lieutenants hissed. They're slipping through every formation. On the Aegis, Steel watched the live feed with quiet satisfaction. The human fighters didn't charge recklessly into head-on engagements. They didn't fight fair. They spiraled, darted, vanished behind debris fields, and appeared again with kill shots lined up. Where Drovak fighters required full banking turns, the Terrans flipped end over end and reoriented mid-flight using burst thrusters and internal gyros. One even shot backwards, engines off, letting momentum carry him through a cluster of enemy craft before reigniting to snap upward into a tight corkscrew, looping behind the pursuers. Another zipped between two Drovak gunships, close enough to skim their hulls, dropping a pair of fusion charges behind him. Both enemy ships detonated seconds later, twin blooms of green fire lighting up the dark. Drovak pilots panicked. They fired wildly. They broke formation. A few squadrons regrouped and managed to score kills. Two Terran interceptors were caught in crossfire and vaporized, their debris tumbling silently through the void. But the Terran squadrons used it all, shadowed asteroid belts, sensor blind spots, gravity wells. At one point, an entire wing dropped low into Earth's upper atmosphere, using the heat signature to mask their return vector before arcing back up and slamming into the Drovak flank. Worse, the humans weren't just targeting enemy fighters. They were actively harassing the Drovak warships. Like hornets attacking a bear, they swarmed weak points. Sensor domes shattered, engine nozzles exploded, point defense turrets jammed or shorted out after precise EMP hits. Vakareth watched one of his destroyers spiral out of control after a squadron of Terran fighters disabled all four of its thrusters in under 15 seconds. "What is this madness?" he growled. "They're not flying patterns," another officer shouted. "They're improvising." Back on Earth's surface, civilians watching the sky saw streaks of light flash like meteor showers, but these weren't falling. They danced. One pilot flew an inverted arc along a Drovak dreadnought's spine, evading no fewer than 6 plasma bolts before unloading a railgun burst directly into the bridge's viewport. Inside his dreadnought, Vakareth staggered as the hull trembled again. He slammed a clawed fist into the console. "By the stars," he snarled. "They're devils in steel." A dance of independent wolves against a rigid beast. One Drovac carrier spun helplessly, drifting into a moon's orbit before its reactors imploded. Another fell to coordinated torpedo runs from 3 squadrons operating on tight silence protocols, guided only by Morse-coded pulses. Vakarith's dreadnought shuddered under impact. "How are they everywhere?" "They're not," Zalvek cried. "They're just smart." As Drovac numbers dwindled, Vakarith launched his last desperate gambit, a planetary assault. Drop pods rained toward Earth's surface, carrying elite breach units meant to cities and destroy planetary defense systems. But the humans were ready. Dozens of abandoned satellites activated, revealing missile pods. High-altitude kinetic platforms turned the skies into shrapnel. Not a single pod made it past thermosphere. On the surface, civilians cheered as streaks of flame fell harmlessly into the oceans. In orbit, Vakarith watched his plan dissolve. And then Steel did the unthinkable. He hailed him. Vakarith stared at the human admiral's face for the first time. Grey-haired, cold eyes, calm. "Commander Vakarith," Steel said, "I suggest you turn around." Vakarith stood in the flickering light of his crippled bridge. Smoke curled from ruptured panels. Emergency klaxons wailed, half muted by the chaos. His armada, his glorious armada, was in ruins. Wreckage drifted across the black. What few ships remained had gone dark or were fleeing. His claws trembled. Behind him, Zalvek spoke in a hushed, disbelieving tone. "Sir, it feels like they were preparing for our arrival for decades. Their fighters, their formations, everything was designed to counter us." Vakarith didn't answer, because deep down, he knew. They had walked into a war they thought would be over by dawn, and instead, they had marched into a trap generations in the making. "Status report," he growled. Silence followed. Then, one by one, his bridge officers answered. 70% of our capital ships are gone. We've lost 3 carriers. Fighter support is collapsing. Multiple dreadnoughts disabled. Communications are fragmented. Boarding units, all destroyed before atmospheric entry. Vakarith's claws tapped slowly on the armrest of his command throne. This was supposed to be a swift conquest, a show of dominance. And yet the humans, outnumbered, outgunned, had turned his fleet into burning debris. They had used the very void against him. Gravity, silence, misdirection. This was no planetary defense. It was a trap from the beginning, a war they had prepared for. Vakarith's gaze returned to the stars, narrowing at the Terran fleet now tightening formation, steady, silent watching. There was no path to victory, not anymore. "Signal the fleet," he said, voice low but resolute. "All remaining vessels, retreat." Zalvek flinched. "Supreme Commander?" Vakarith's jaw clenched. "Order the retreat. Now." The Wrath of Dominion turned slowly, limping through the void, followed by what remained of his once proud armada, scarred, broken, and humbled. And Earth remained behind them, unbroken, triumphant. Steel watched the flickering wrecks of Drovac's ships scatter across the void like dying embers. The battle here was over, but his expression remained unreadable. He exhaled slowly. "Let's hope the other half of our fleet is giving the Drovac just as much hell on Kelorin homeworld."